welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. We have our next speaker in our speaker series for Hispanic Heritage Month. We are very happy to have everyone. I'm seeing people kind of flood on in, so we're going to let people come in and then we'll get started. We are very excited tonight to welcome Roberto Álvarez.
Can I start translating? No, you cannot hear me? Or are you going to give me the signal?
Give me 1 second. Okay, Mr. Gallimore, do you want to go to our next slide? So go ahead, Aurora. Let's tell them how they can get translation.
Muy buenas tardes. Bienvenidos a esta serie de conferencias presentadas en colaboración con la Biblioteca de la ciudad de Glendale, la Biblioteca de Arte y Cultura de la ciudad de Glendale. Esta noche tendremos como invitado al señor Roberto Álvarez, quien es el asistente especial de la supervisora Catherine Barker para los asuntos militares y de los veteranos. Para escuchar esta conferencia en español, favor de hacer clic en el icono de interpretación, selecciona en español, en el globo terrestre, español, muy bien, ok.
Thank you, Aurora. We appreciate you being here tonight. Okay, so I just want to take a second and thank all of our speakers who have been with us, as well as those who are coming up. And I want to thank those who introduced us to our speakers, Ms. Bautista, Ms. Quinones at La Crescenta Elementary School, Anita Quinones Gabrielian, one of our favorite community members, our GLA president, Jenny Quinones Skinner. And I know there's a lot of Quinones on the screen, but I promise they're not related. So there are 3 different families there. I'd also like to thank Mr. Gallimore for organizing all of this and being the tech, the man behind the machine. Our GUSD district board, our superintendent, they've been super helpful and, helping us to provide the translation, helping us to get this organized, partnering with us. So I'm very thankful for their support, as well as our Glendale Latino Association, our partners in scholarships and everything. They're a wonderful organization. If you haven't joined Glendale Latino Association this year, please do. All the money goes towards scholarships, and we want to support them. This year, our new partner is our Glendale Public Libraries. We are thrilled to partner with them on this, as well as Dia de los Muertos, which is coming up. Every day we get a little bit closer. And then, of course, I want to thank all my members of Adelante Latinos for helping us out, supporting us, and being there in the background. And thank you to our student moderators. We don't have a student moderator tonight. We weren't able to get anyone at this point, but we are happy with those that we've had in the last couple weeks. And we're grateful to them. If you haven't already joined our social media, please do. We have email, we have website, we have Facebook, we have Insta, we have Twitter, we have YouTube. We don't have a TikTok yet, but now that I have a TikTok account, maybe we will one day. You will never see me do a TikTok video, but that's okay. If you missed some of our previous speakers, we have them on our YouTube channel. You are welcome to go and view those videos at any time. Please do so. Our last speaker, all of our speakers have been amazing, but the last speaker was, I really enjoyed him quite a bit. So our next speaker coming up after tonight is Roberto Negrete, who I think is in our audience tonight. I think I saw his name pop up there, so if you're out there, welcome. And Dean Flores will be joining us next Wednesday. So we only have 2 left after tonight, and then Hispanic Heritage Month will be over. Our next strategic planning meeting is Wednesday, November 3rd from 6 to 8 via Zoom. We would love to have you join us and bring a friend. We would love to hear all the voices. Help us support all of our Latinx kids, grades K through 14. So here we go. I'm going to be your moderator tonight. Woohoo! Hang on, because it's going to get wacky. I'm here tonight. I'm going to introduce Roberto Álvarez, who's the Special Assistant to LA County Supervisor Catherine Barker for Military and Veteran Affairs. So, United States Army veteran with experience in municipal and county government and proficiency in community relations to enhance programs, utilization of benefits, and access to services. That is a lot. He also has a background in establishing and fostering strategic partnerships to develop policy that improves internal and external cross-sector collaboration among government, private, and nonprofit organizations for service of veterans, service members, and military families. And as the aunt of an Army serviceman right now, he's currently stationed in the United States, in Georgia. But I know this is, and I have a brother that is a veteran from the Navy, so this is important to me. So we are thrilled to have you tonight, Roberto, and I'm going to give it over to you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the invitation. I'd like to thank Ms. Quinones, who was the one who reached out. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for being such a gracious host. I'm going to see if I can share my screen really quick. I think you should be able to see it. Can you let me know if you can see the presentation?
Absolutely, sir. You're looking good. You just had to hit present.
Yep. Got it. So before I start, I actually would like to take a message, and I'm going to throw the, go a little off track. But I want to say this in Spanish just because I feel like this is something I wish my parents would have heard. Pero quiero agradecerles a todos los familiares, especialmente los papás que están hoy en esta presentación. La razón por la cual quiero tomar el momento para dar las gracias a ustedes es porque los papás, especialmente los papás que tienen hijos de primera generación aquí, no siempre saben cómo poder ayudar a los estudiantes, y de alguna manera u otra cada uno de ustedes está encontrando la forma de ayudar a todos, y como dije en inglés, es algo que a mí me hubiera gustado poder tener, pero pues las cosas no se dieron. Pero yo creo que siempre hay oportunidad de continuar con las generaciones que vienen y continuar apoyando a la comunidad latina que pues, vienen a este país con la meta de prosperar, y yo sé que cada uno de ustedes ha sacrificado bastante para sus hijos y para la comunidad, así que entonces solo quería tomar ese momento para dar las gracias. All right, so I do apologize. I just wanted to share a special message with the parents. So as someone who was born in Pasadena, I am a first-generation Honduran American. So I am 4 out of 5 children. So the picture on lower left-hand side is the 4 oldest, and then about 7 years after I was born, we had my little sister. So the interesting thing about Pasadena is known for very important things like the Rose Bowl and Caltech, the beautiful Pasadena City Hall. And most people assume when I tell them I'm from Pasadena that that's what they think of. Unfortunately, I grew up in a historically redline community within the city of Pasadena. So as a child of this community, we really contended with very rare real issues that I know some of my contemporaries have faced. To give you an example, we moved to my parents' house in 1993. In 1994, we had a daytime robbery where my mom, my aunt, my uncle were essentially held hostage, and I was threatened by gunpoint that if I wouldn't stop crying, I'd get shot. So as a 3-year-old, probably not something that you want to experience. But the reality is, a lot of other families would in that instance move. But my parents had really sacrificed so much to move here at that point that we just stayed here. We had no other option. So it's stories like that are really important. Going to some of the public schools, I'm a product of Pasadena Unified School District. I attended local schools. And one of the reasons why I pointed out to the parents the sacrifice is because as a child in elementary school, middle school, I was very much academically gifted child. Unfortunately, by the time I was 15 or 16, my dad left. So what was interesting about that time is, here I was, a 15, 16-year-old kid, just barely got my license, and I'm having to drive my mom, who didn't have the license at the time, and both my sisters went to college and went to elementary school. So it very much kind of altered my perspective and my understanding of community and the things that are available. And after that, it really affected me academically. One of the things that I in hindsight understand now is that it would have been significantly beneficial if I was taken to some type of therapy and really had an opportunity to process what was going on in my life at the time. But eventually I did graduate high school, graduated from Blair High School, and I will say that my academic performance at that point was not great. So after I graduated high school, I did try to attend school. So I went to Santa Monica College for a semester, and I transferred to the University of North Dakota. One of the things that I realized very quickly is I didn't have the money for school, and I didn't have the resources to pay for things. So I had to make a decision. I had to either look at my options and either decide if I wanted to get student loans, which, as I had read, it was a very scary thing to consider, or I couldn't ask. I knew I couldn't ask my parents. Who barely made it by. So out of a sense of patriotism and out of a sense of, well, at least when I'm done, I'll be able to have money for school, I joined the Army. So I attended basic training in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. So the three photos at the top, that was my basic training. Then I went on to complete my additional training at Fort Gordon, Georgia. And I have to say that was probably the first time that I witnessed racism. Growing up in Pasadena, it's very multicultural, so I understood the concept of racism, but I guess it never really affected me. But when I was in Fort Gordon, I remember walking through the streets of Augusta one day with a battle buddy, and someone just drove up and said, "Go back to your country," which really enraged me. Here I am, first generation, really fought with my family to join the military, and I'm being told to go to a country that I supposedly was from. So that really opened my eyes. So after that, I went to Fort Hood, Texas, and got to spend a little bit of time there. One of the things that I did do on my off time while I was at Fort Hood, Texas, is I had to walk a good 30 to 45 minutes to the education center to make sure that while I was there, I was still attending school. So I was able to enroll with Coastline Community College. And one of the things that I took advantage, just because I had nothing better to do while I was in there, is I took a CLEP test. Didn't think anything of it. The Army was giving it to me for free, so I took it. And what was interesting is when I got my results, one of the staff members brought it back and told me, I've never seen a score this high. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And she said, you got a 79 out of 80 in Spanish, of all things. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm not sure what that means. So during this time, I was actually deployed to Kuwait, and something interesting happened while I was over there. Something felt different. I wasn't in combat. Technically, I was in a forward operating area, but I wasn't in any imminent danger. But I think a combination of toxic leadership, and I say toxic leadership because that was my case, but they're just like in all aspects of life, sometimes you will meet leadership that isn't always the best. But in this instance, that's kind of what I had. But I ended up actually having a moment where I felt like I needed help, so I decided to go speak to the chaplain. The chaplain said, "Look, like I can talk with you, but I think you need a little bit more help." So from there, I was asked, I was recommended to go see the local mental health provider, and I guess I said too much. So it triggered a chain of events, and eventually I was medevac from country, sent to Germany. That was a very difficult time, just because here I felt like I had finally decided I wanted to talk to someone, and I felt betrayed. I felt like, by talking and not being able to be strong enough, I was removed away from my unit. I was removed away from, my brothers and sisters. We were there for a mission, and 6 months out, I got taken out. It was really difficult to really process. So after being in Germany, I was sent to Fort Sam Houston in Texas, and was medically retired in February of 2013, which again, it was a difficult thing because I had a plan in mind, and instead what happened is life threw me a curveball. So I was discharged and had to return home. That return home was probably the most difficult, but also the most rewarding time of my life, because I'd only been gone a little under 3 years, but by the time I came back, everything felt different. Understandably, some things had changed, but most everything was the same. But at the same time, I couldn't really put my finger on it, and it felt different. So that first year of trying to reintegrate was really difficult. I was isolated, I was angry, I was mad at myself. But I gradually had to work through it, and I ended up deciding to enroll at Pasadena City College. That was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. Pasadena City College has a very robust Veterans Resource Center. I wasn't active. The thing I did it for is I benefited from the fact that we got priority registration. So I thought, hey, this is definitely a win. But things would start off well. The semesters would start off great, and then for some reason I would just hit a wall. So one day I finally decided that I've got to go to the VRC and ask for help, and that's what I did. And it was really tough to overcome this fear of like, what's going to happen if I say something. But I was able to connect with the right agencies and right organizations to really help me rationalize both, some of the experiences that I had in the Army, but also the experiences that I had growing up. Some of the traumas that as a family, we never really addressed internally. My family's very religious, so their thought process is just go to church and then things will get better. And look, things get better, but also if you keep hiding it, then it'll still linger. So again, as I, working through this, I really was able to discover something that, in my family had always been taboo, which is understanding that the mind sometimes operates a little bit differently based on circumstances that have happened in the past. So from there, I did end up getting a job at T-Mobile, which is one of those really interesting things. I remember starting the position and I was told, well, the position was just graded, so you kind of do what you want to. So I was really able to build on my military experience and really define the position for myself, so much so that people started noticing, and I was then asked to go to other stores. Some of the leadership at T-Mobile started asking me to support at a higher level. Really giving me experience that as a 23-year-old I shouldn't have, working with our regional office and seeing some of the operations. it really was a great experience to be able to put to use what I had learned in the Army. So while I was working, I then transferred to Arizona State University. So one of the things that I realized while I was at PCC is that I couldn't find a way to connect with my contemporaries. It was 3 or 4 years older, if that, but the experiences that my classmates had were so different that I just felt trivial sometimes. So I decided I wanted to go back into a virtual classroom. And that was the best, one of the best things that I did academically speaking. So I went from struggling at PCC to finishing 59 units in a year and a half and graduating with honors. Granted, while I was doing this, I also began interning with a local council member. So here I was working, going to school and interning. I don't know how it happened, but somehow it happened. But again, it provided me some type of direction again, and through this I was able to reestablish relationships, and learn a lot. So one of the things that I did rediscover is my passion for being an adrenaline junkie. So there's a picture here of me bungee jumping, which is the second one in the bottom, and then the third one is when I went skydiving. So it I don't know, that those experiences would kind of just give me a reset. So I do know that my family isn't a fan of it, but I've really enjoyed it. So so the parents here, I hope I don't upset any of you, because my intent is not to sell this for your children. So from that experience, I was told sometime in 2017, I believe, that my position at T-Mobile was actually being eliminated. And that was really difficult because, I didn't know where I was going. I chose to be a political science major, which a lot of people told me, well, what are you going to do with that? You can't really do anything. But one of the things I kept doing is I still kept interning, and there was a position that opened up with a council member, and I applied and went through the process and went through the selection process, but ultimately was not selected. The one conscious decision that I made was that even if I didn't get the position, I would still continue to intern. What was important to me is the exposure and learning, and sometimes things don't work out the way we expect, but I decided, hey, I won't be bitter and upset about it, so I'll keep doing it. So right as the position was going to be eliminated, I was going to be transitioned over to sales, and I for some reason it just didn't stick well with me. I didn't like the idea of having to give people things that they didn't always need. So I, on the spot, said, look, like, I'm done. I have no plan. So I, gave my 2 weeks notice and left. And I kind of took a plunge, but what happened, I guess by accident or, by some higher power, is that a couple of days after, I was offered the full-time position, which I had actually been rejected for. One of the reasons that I was told that I was offered the position is, despite not being selected, I continued doing the internship. And then right after that, about 2 months later, I was offered a position with Supervisor Barger. Now, with Supervisor Barger, it was a bit of a difficult transition, and the reason I say that is, I'm one of those very proud men who are, likes being self-autonomous, but also I was always told, don't be a snitch, right? So I remember being a kid and being hurt, and my grandma yelled at me like, "Oh, just suck it up." So when I transitioned over to the supervisor's office, there was some conflict between myself and one of my colleagues, to me, it just felt like, hey, something's off here. But what I ended up ultimately deciding was, in my mind, well, I think maybe this is, I'm just not a good fit. But I remember feeling miserable. And then one day I was asked to attend lunch with some of my colleagues, and they asked me how things were going. And I said, look, like I think I'm not a good fit here, so I want to leave on good terms, but just it's not working out for me. And then eventually they kind of found out the treatment that I was getting behind the scenes from one of my colleagues, and she was relocated and things got better. But I felt really bad about it. I felt like because I had spoken of something bad had happened to my coworker, and that really took me kind of like a while to get over, because I felt guilt. But as I think about it, I was just kind of expressing what was going on without intending to have anyone dismissed. So I did start off as a staff assistant, which was a demotion from what I was doing with the city, but I just figured, hey, this is the county so much larger, there's a lot more opportunities, and sure enough, about 5 or 6 months into working at the county, the deputy that was handling military and veterans affairs left, and I was offered the position. I was offered to take on the role, and this one was a tough role because being a veteran, I wanted to do good and live up to the expectation, but I'd never worked on military and veterans issues. I'd helped on some projects here and there, but nothing to say that I had the experience. But I continued pushing forward, and gradually I was really able to learn the position, and that was also a difficult area to crack into because going and looking younger than relatively the rest of the veterans kind of working in this field and policy, I often got looked at as like, who's this kid and why is he here? But it didn't stop me. I kept going, and in that first year and a half, I was really able to learn a lot, really able to understand a lot of the different components that goes into care and services in the veteran community. But along the way, I also had some really, really fun experiences and got to meet some really cool people. So for any of you baseball fans, the top left-hand photo is Mr. Jaime Jarrin, who, as we've all heard, is retiring, but that's the voice of the Dodgers in Spanish. I've gotten to give presentations and give awards. Got to go horseback riding, which is not something that I've done before, but definitely something that was pretty fun. This is I think the second photo in the middle roll that is Miss Angela Bassett, who I got to meet at an event, which is a really cool thing. So I will say that I have that picture hung on my desk, just because it's a cool memory, I guess. But the bottom left one is one of my favorite ones. I've really gotten to learn more about my history as a veteran, my history of the lineage of kind of where the service has been and where it's going. So this is an event called Wreaths Across America, where individuals go out to different cemeteries and they put a wreath on every veteran, kind of as a reminder that we haven't forgotten them. And then the photo that follows that one, you can't actually see it, but we started a friendly competition in the office with my colleague to see who would wear the best socks on Wednesday. So now I've got a massive collection of socks with everything from like Sonic and NASA, like fighter jets and cartoon characters. But in this instance, the supervisor decided to suggest to my colleague that she get socks with my face printed on them. So definitely not something that I was expecting, but she definitely won that day. The one after, we convinced our office to let us dress up for Halloween. So as you can see, we're dressed up as a Buzz, Bo Peep, and Woody. And then one of my other favorite ones that I would have enjoyed a lot more when I was a kid is I got to meet Smokey Bear, which was actually an idea that I had in terms of bringing the fire service to the county so we can celebrate Smokey's birthday, but also promote awareness of fires and more consciousness for people. A couple of changes that have happened in the office more recently is I've now been given the portfolio of digital divide policy. So digital divide is one of those areas where, you know, we've seen it especially during the pandemic, where there's a disparity in terms of those who have access to the internet and those who have access to technology. So really looking at the ways that the county can work with organizations, work with the community, work with the inter-service providers to make a meaningful impact, especially as we start to get funding from the state and federal government. Our concern is that we are able to get the community the resources that they need, and we're able to invest in areas that may have been forgotten in the past. And then more recently, I was also given the opportunity to work on Hispanic community outreach, which is really important to me, just because, again, I grew up in communities like the ones that we serve now, and I also have that perspective and understand that, unfortunately, oftentimes, just like veterans have been, the Hispanic community, especially those with undocumented status, aren't really comfortable asking for help. You know, there are a couple of community leaders, but for the most part, we don't see a lot of the community be trustful of the resources, and you know, it's completely understandable. So my hope and intent is really working with this community, not to just show up and say, oh, you know, here are a couple of things, but really understanding their perspective, really understanding what's working, what's not working in terms of county services, because the best gauge to understand how the county is working is to really getting it firsthand from the source, understanding that oftentimes we implement policy and we think this is a great idea, but it doesn't always translate. So it doesn't mean that we failed, it just means that we have an opportunity to go back and fix things to make sure that we're actually meeting our target in terms of whatever population any programming is intended to help. So some of the highlights that I have had in the office is I've worked on implementing the Los Angeles County Veteran Peer Access Network. So this is actually a really cool thing because it's the first in the country to be to have a county paid group of peers that are working across the county to help both veterans and families navigate the VA, navigate county benefits. One of the things that we understand is, you know, like I said previously, with the Hispanic community, is it's always easier for a veteran to talk to another veteran. It's always easier for people to feel comfortable when there isn't a power dynamic where people feel like they're in different standing. We've also been able to work on the development of the LA County Veteran Service and Review Team. Unfortunately, one of the statistics in the county or world across the country is that veterans are, you know, at a higher risk for suicide. So locally in LA County, the general population has a lower suicide rate than the general population across the United States. But what's fascinating is that in LA County, if you're a veteran, you're 2 to 4 times more likely to die by suicide than a non-veteran. I've also had an opportunity to work on, to advocate and secure $1 million in funding to develop training for veterans to be employed in aerospace careers. I've been able to plan a couple of major events. More recently, I've been able to speak about veterans' mental health and suicide prevention, which if you had asked me to do something along those lines a year or so ago, I would have been significantly hesitant because it was still so taboo. During the pandemic, one of the cool things that I got to do was help in the polls, and again, that kind of reignited this desire to help the Hispanic community. In the polls, I was able to help a lot of older Spanish-speaking individuals, which is really cool to see how much easier we've made it as a county to have people vote, and seeing people really proud to cast a ballot, seeing family members come in was really, really rewarding, especially when we had older individuals who came in and didn't have anyone. I was able to walk them through the process and help them make sure that their voice was heard. I've also had the opportunity to work distributing food. So the top picture on the right were some of the food drives that we did within the district. The one that follows it at the bottom is actually happened about two weeks ago, where we were handing out diapers and baby wipes to families, and there were other resources there. But again, just being able to give something seemingly small to a family, you can see how happy they are to at least have one less thing to have to worry about. And one of my favorite pictures on this slide is the one on the bottom right. So she is an interim director of the Pasadena Veterans Resource Center, and I was able to present her an award. She was actually the one who kind of whipped me into shape and reminded me that I needed to go and get help, and there was no excuse. And most importantly, out of all the highlights, though, is the outreach to educating and helping the community. There's a sense of accomplishment when I get connected to these community members, and I'm able to help them connect with county services or help them with some of the issues that they may have. There's a saying that there's some things that you can't put a value to, and personally for me, that's one of the best feelings in the world when I get to go home and I know that day I physically or tangibly was able to help someone get what they needed. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of structure in terms of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. So most people are aware of city government. So most people look at the city of LA. I would like to remind everyone there are 88 cities. So in some of our districts, we have to work with multiple cities, each with their own mayor, and depending on where they are in the district, the needs are going to be different. So then above the city government, we have county government. So at the county, there are a couple of elected positions. So you've got the supervisors who are all elected. You have the county assessor who's elected. The district attorney is elected. The sheriff are elected positions. So currently, the population of the county is a little over 10 million residents. We're still waiting on the final numbers from the census. So the county itself the county government itself is ran by the Board of Supervisors, of which there are 5. Currently, it is the first all-female board in a county's history, and Supervisor Barger represents the 5th Supervisorial District on that board. For context, the most recent budget for the county was about $39 billion. So as you can tell, it's a very big organization. there are about 34 county departments, and then when we add related agencies, there's a lot more, and there are about approximately 200 commissions. So as I said, there are 88 incorporated cities and approximately 120 to 125 unincorporated areas. So the differences between the incorporated cities, so the city of Glendale has its own mayor and has its own municipal structure. For those of you who might be familiar with areas like Altadena or parts of La Crescenta, those are unincorporated areas. So it's kind of like a city, but they have no municipal government. So the county provides government services for them. So just a little bit about Supervisor Barger. So the 5th district is the big one with a lot of pink. So our district is about 2,800 square miles. We cover the San Gabriel, Crescenta, San Fernando, Santa Clarita, and Antelope Valleys. So one of the interesting things about Supervisor Barger is that she actually started off as an intern in the office of Supervisor Michael Antonovich, ultimately became the chief of staff and ran for office when Supervisor Antonovich was termed out. So she was elected into office in 2016. Most recently was reelected in 2020. For those of you who would like to connect with in your community with some of our offices, we have 5 field offices, one in San Dimas, one in Pasadena, one in Chatsworth, one in Santa Clarita, and the other one in Lancaster. So the supervisor's role, aside from working internally in government, is also to collaborate with cities. She developed policy initiatives for the county. Again, they develop the annual budget, but they also advocate on behalf of communities at the state and federal government. She also represents the county on numerous boards, including Metro, MetroLink, the California State Association of Counties, which is SCAG, or CSAC, Southern California Association of Governments, which is SCAG, a couple sanitation districts, and National Association of Counties, which is NACO. So one of the most important things to take away from this slide is if you're having issues with county agencies or you have something county related, don't be afraid to reach out to the office. We're there to help, especially I can think about my own parents' day. I would never call any type of government, but oftentimes it's the easiest way to solve that problem. So if there's a resource that's needed from the Department of Public Social Services with any type of benefits that way, maybe some of our county hospitals, the Department of Mental Health, county libraries, there's a lot of resources at the county that are available to all of you. So for those of you who would like to kind of know where our field offices are and connect with the website, you can scan the QR code. And then I've also provided the number of the office, which is 213-974-5555. The email office is below that, and then you can follow the supervisor on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the last one at the bottom is the website. So I will close out with a thank you, and here's my contact information. But I want to quote something that one of our drill sergeants used to always say, which was always take the opportunity, even if it's an offer to learn underwater basket weaving. Taking opportunities and saying yes to chances or one of the best things that you can do. So even if it doesn't seem relevant at the time, you never know how beneficial it can be in the end. So that's all I've got. I'm not sure how we want to transition after this. Thank you all.
Thank you, Roberto. Mr. Gallimore, can you start my video?
You're muted, ma'am.
So you've been watching some of our videos, I think, because you had a common theme of just saying yes. You're now the third person who we have heard this from. So thank you for that. I think that's a great message for students to hear. Okay, we have about 10 questions. Let me see. The first one is, who or what was your inspiration?
This will be cliche, but it'll be my mom. Even when my dad left, she found a way to make it work. Was always that person that did everything possible to make sure that we, at the very least, had the basic necessities that we had. But also, I think her making sure that we understood the Honduran culture in them, and we understood that background. But most importantly, really learned to value humility, because there's a lot you can learn if you're humble, and if you have an opportunity to just take a step back and listen. So I don't think anyone has taught me more of some of the or greater lessons than that.
Thank you. For all the mothers out there, thank you. We appreciate that. And kids, take notes whenever you're asked that question. You always say your mother.
Someone tell my mom I said that, so she'll be good with me.
Christmas is coming up. We'll get you some good presents. So this question is, what did you think within yourself while surviving through the racism or discrimination that you talked about?
I think I was more shocked than anything. Again, it's one of those things that I've heard a lot, but the experience of actually being able to go out of our bubble here in California and LA, where it's so multicultural, being able to experience that racism, being able to spend time across the South and in other states, I started to realize, oh, now I understand why they're saying this, because they're not used to it. It's so foreign to them. So just as racism might be foreign to some of us, minorities and diversity is foreign in some of these areas. So as much as I wanted to be angry, it's also an opportunity. It was an opportunity for me to reflect on, the different values that people have, and why potentially this individual could have thought the way that he was thinking.
Thank you. How has your, and remind you, my day job is I'm a principal. So this question I'm asking with a little bit of humor. How has your job changed since the pandemic? Is there any procedures or new assignments you need to do now? And I'm laughing because I think all of our jobs have changed a little bit. But
I mean, maybe the procedures have changed, but the job of helping people hasn't changed at all. That's core of our job, I assume, even as a principal, is to make sure that we're taking care of people. That civil servants, that's what we do.
That's right. That was beautifully said too. That's right. Okay. Let's see. What made you, or what made you want to go into the military? So
I just had a sense of patriotism. Again, part of it was based on the fact that I couldn't afford school, but also I was just drawn to it. I like to joke with people that I never liked being told what to do, and that's why I didn't play sports. And somehow I ended up in the Army. But it taught me a lot of discipline, and I think that it taught me a lot of discipline internally, also with external factors. But I think the most important thing is I was able to experience a lot of things that either I wouldn't have experienced until later on in life, or ever at all. So part of the decision was just taking a plunge.
Saying yes, yeah. What is your advice for students who don't know what they want to do in the future?
So it's funny that people say this, or that students are asking, because I still get asked this, and I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And it's an evolution. We have to be open-minded. this idea, this perception that you have to do what everyone else does really is more detracting than anything, just because we all have different paths. If you would have asked me right out of high school, I had a path that I was exactly going to take, but it's evolved. I've gone from wanting to work in retail to wanting to work in local government, and now here. But it's just being open to the opportunity. And the reason I say that is I really found my passion when I got here and I was offered the opportunity to work with veterans. For the most part, I like my jobs before, but this is something that I've loved. The outreach is something that I love. So if I would have had my mindset on something, I probably wouldn't have ended up here.
Great, thank you. And you may have already answered this a little bit. Well, what was so far in your life? What's the greatest challenge you've had to overcome?
Self-confidence. I have a unique skill set. I like to think I'm competent for the most part, but I perceive myself with a lot of doubt sometimes, even though I know that I can accomplish things. So it's still a challenge. It's a process of learning how to overcome it, because what I found is oftentimes what limits me the most is myself.
Yeah, I'm going to say, I think I would have answered that the same way growing up. Self-confidence, definitely. What are some ways our young people can make a difference in their community?
I was hoping I'd get asked that question. So from my perspective is we need young people to be involved in government. The decisions that are being made now are going to affect us for a long time in the future. And we also have to be mindful that every generation has different perspectives. And we shouldn't have to wait until a certain age to have our voices heard. Also, young people have the ability to echo the voice of people who traditionally haven't been heard. So you're kind of a force multiplier. There's a lot of advocacy now for disenfranchised groups, and that's why it's important for me. That's one of the most important ways that young people can get involved. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to meet any parameter or requirement. Our jobs are to take the input from the community, and we very much are the community and our constituency.
So here's one. In what ways, it's a similar question, but more specific, in what ways can young people today change or affect the representation of people of Hispanic, Latinx heritage in mainstream culture?
So if we're talking about culture, it's the way that we consume things. So if we continue to consume things that we don't feel fit who we are, we're validating it just because it's convenient. It's a matter of finding things that that reaffirm your position. So it really things can start to reflect what we want to see. Again, it's the self-doubt. We know what we want, but for the sake of convenience and for the sake of everyone around us, we decide to just not rock the boat. But again, one of the things I admire about this younger generation is their ability to say no. Like I want to be heard. So just continue wanting to be heard and do what you feel is best because you want it, not because anyone else tells you to.
I love that. Okay, last one. What are some things you wish you had done differently in high school?
I wish I would have convinced my parents to be more involved. It was nice not having them bother me at all, but as you start to get older, at least for me, I started getting distracted. And again, I also had a lot I had to deal with, but having more involvement would have been nice. But I don't know that I would change anything now, just because it's kind of built my different experiences and kind of built my repertoire of life. But in an ideal situation, it would have been nicer to have a more direct route, but the detours along the way have been pretty nice too.
We are where we're supposed to be, right? I mean, that's what brings us here. So, well, that brings us, we've got like 2 minutes left. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us? Any closing thoughts?
No, like I said, I want to express our gratitude to the parents who are here and to this community. And again, I think you guys are doing a marvelous job. I will be honest, and I enjoyed a couple of your previous speakers. So thank you for just echoing the different voices and showing us the diversity that's around us.
Well, I've been involved a couple times with Catherine Berger's office. She reached out to us, right, Bill, last year during the pandemic on what we needed. And
Right.
I know we appreciated her just listening. So I know there's good work being done in your office, and there's always work to be done with our vets. So thank you for doing that very important work. We want to make sure, at least I do, that they're taken care of, and that we know how much we appreciate their service.
Yeah, if there's anything that I can do for you and the group, just let me know. As I was always taught to say in Spanish, a las órdenes.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Stay tuned. We're coming back Wednesday with our next speaker, Roberto Negrete, from our Senator Alex Padilla's office, our first Hispanic U.S. Senator. And then also in November, Dia de los Muertos in Glendale, at the Glendale Central Library, from 3 to 7. I'm so excited to have that in-person event this year. So please join us there. And what is this, Bill? This is a new one. This is what Glendale Community College is doing, I think.
Yeah, so this is their Latinx Heritage Month, so we wanted to make sure that you saw that, and you can go to their website to get that information.
Yeah, thank you. They're doing a similar series. Maybe next year we can partner with them. We're just going to partner with everyone. But thank you, everyone, students, teachers, parents, our community, our presenters. Thank you very much, Roberto. I wish you all the luck, and we hope to see you soon in another event. Take care, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.